Recording in progress.
Unit 4.4.1, the social construction of childhood. This topic, like we were discussing this in the last lesson, we had covered up this part and this part in part one. Today we'll be covering this part, inshallah. Starting off with the idea of social construction of childhood, like we had discussed earlier. The idea, the notion that childhood is not a natural phenomenon, instead it is a social construction. So while discussing childhood being a social construction, if you move on and talk about a child-centered 20th century, 20th century के अंदर आपके पास ऐसी क्या change आ गई जिससे which was different from how childhood was experienced earlier. A child-centered 20th century. This notion of child-centeredness, we've had a question on this in our CIs, right? This notion of child-centeredness, we have had a question on this earlier. When we talk about child-centeredness kya hota hai? The idea that catering to a child's needs and requirements is the most essential feature of a particular family. Now, the 20th century therefore saw the emergence of child-centered societies in both the USA and Europe, in which childhood is seen as a very distinct and separate life stage category from adulthood. Chambers argues that in the 20th century, childhood came to be seen as a sacred and set apart from other life stages. Now, if you talk about different life stages that an individual goes through, one, we could talk about childhood. Number two, we talk about adulthood, and then being elderly. Okay? अब childhood और adulthood के बीच में आप लोग youth as a category, distinctive category भी कई जगहों पे consider की जाती है. And over the period of time, over the last few centuries, it has been seen that there have been a lot other distinctions or categories that are recognized today, which were not recognized earlier, right? From infants to toddlers, to being a child, to tween, to teenage, to adulthood, so on and so forth. Beta, can you ask Miss to, I've sent her a document, can you ask her to send us a couple of printouts? Now, this idea continues today in that children are often perceived by more industrial societies as special people with unique needs who need separate forms of treatment as well as protection from the dangers and corrupting influences of the adult world. Do we all understand this? Childhood being considered as a distinctively different phase, the need for childhood experiences to be children to be kept away from the corrupting influences of adult world, from the harsh realities of the world, as we were discussing it yesterday. Today, children are cherished for their sentimental value. They now occupy a central place in the emotional life of the homes, in the sense that having and rearing children is seen as symbolic of commitment and family stability. Does everyone get this? Do we all get this? Yeah. Now, taking it ahead, if we talk about the main features, corrupting influences, the harsh realities of the world. Adult world के अंदर जो drugs, etc. Clear? Main features of childhood. Cunningham in 2006 noted that child-centered society has three major features. Number one, childhood, which legally extends to the age of 18 years in most societies, is regarded as the opposite of adulthood. Right? पहला feature में क्या ध्यान में रखना है जनाब? Today, with the passage of time, it has been recognized by many that childhood as a phase is considered to be very different from adulthood. For instance, आपका यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान में रहते हुए आपका NIC बनता है, आपको voting right मिलता है. You're not allowed to drive till you're 18 legally, officially. You're not consumption of tobacco is prohibited, alcohol is prohibited, so on and so forth. Clear here? Now, opposite of childhood being considered as an opposite of adulthood, children are viewed as innocent, vulnerable, and dependent beings in need of adult protection from a range of potential threats such as bad parenting, neglect, exploitation, and so on. One. Number two, the social worlds of adults and children are physically and symbolically separated. For instance, there are certain places where children do not have, they're not allowed to have access to certain places. For instance, workplace के अंदर आप नहीं expect करते बच्चे जाएंगे, bars के अंदर, so on and so forth. Clear here? Number three, childhood is associated with certain rights today. For example, the right to happiness, to be safe, to be healthy, to play and to enjoy childhood. Do we get this? These 3 points were put forward by Cunningham in the year, here you go, in the year 2006. So one, childhood is separate from adulthood. Number two, there is a difference in terms of physical and symbolical. So physically and symbolically, children are separated from adults. ये examples हमने बात की, और उसके बाद children today have certain rights that they did not have earlier. Now, with the passage of time, since the nature of childhood, the experiences of childhood were changing, right? अब आपके पास स्टेट की इन्वॉल्वमेंट भी ज्यादा होना शुरू हो गई. जब हम स्टेट की इन्वॉल्वमेंट की बात करते हैं तो द स्टेट स्टार्टेड रिकॉग्नाइजिंग दैट चाइल्डहुड was a sacred and special period of an individual's life. According to Wells in 2009 notes that this government of childhood is almost entirely organized around saving children from internal threats and external threats. Internal threats such as neglectful parenthood, abusive parenthood, external threats such as germs, viruses, ignorances and media representation. अब हर स्टेट के अंदर कुछ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस होते हैं, राइट? अब कुछ, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द मोर डेवलप्ड पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, आपके पास ज्यादा स्ट्रिक्ट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होती है इन रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस के ऊपर के ऊपर. अब किस तरह की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होती है? फॉर इंस्टेंस, like I had said, if we're talking about the Western world, the more developed parts of the globe, you'd see वहाँ पे neglect of a child is considered to be an offense, right? And parents are penalized if anything like that is reported. Clear here? Likewise, abusive parenthood. Do we understand this? They both considered as an example of an internal threat that a child may experience. External threats, आपके पास पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी गवर्नमेंट आपकी वैक्सीन्स प्रोवाइड कर रही होती है बच्चों के लिए, and they're free, right? So these are the initiatives that have been taken by the state, that have been taken by the government, keeping children away from germs, keeping children away from viruses, keeping children inoculated, vaccinated, so that they aren't they don't have to experience medical illnesses. Now, likewise, in this sense, the state aims to take responsibility for the emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual development of the child, so that he or she grows up to be a normal law-abiding citizen. As Chambers notes that this is the state taking on the role of a good parent. If the state is catering to all of these needs, the internal threats, the external threats, according to Chambers, it wouldn't be wrong if we refer to the state playing the role of a good parent today. Do we get this? Now, social policy aimed at safeguarding children has taken a variety of forms. Number one, state health services हैं आपके पास, पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी हैं, right? किस हद तक वो डिपार्टमेंट सही तरीके से काम करते हैं या नहीं करते, लेकिन पाकिस्तान में भी हैं आपके पास फैसिलिटीज. State health services often oversee children's health in a variety of ways via antenatal, maternity, and postnatal. That is pre-birth, after birth, and during the maternity period. Right? Health visits to the homes of new mothers, the mass vaccination of children through family GPs. Mass vaccination की जहाँ पे आप बात करते हैं, घरों घरों पे पाकिस्तान में भी आपने देखा होगा पोलियो के ड्रॉप्स के लिए आ रही होती हैं टीम्स, ठीक है? तो ये सारे इनिशिएटिव्स आपकी स्टेट ले रही है. The mass vaccination of children through family GPs and through the availability of consultants who specialize in children's illnesses, that is pediatricians and specialist children's hospitals and wards. Getting this here? One. Number two, the state has made education compulsory today. आपकी स्टेट ने एजुकेशन को कंपलसरी बना दिया है, राइट? जहां पे स्टेट ने एजुकेशन को कंपलसरी बना दिया, that automatically means the state is taking steps, or the state is intervening, or the state is making sure that every child does get educated, clear, so that they could grow up to be law-abiding citizens. Number three, a major role of social services and social workers is to police those families in which children are thought to be at the risk of neglect or abuse. Children at the risk of neglect or abuse, the state protects them. Number four, the law has been used by the state to exclude children from activities which may harm them. Activities such as them not being allowed to consume tobacco, smoke, them not allowed to consume alcohol. Clear here? They may not be allowed to see certain types of films at the cinema, and they may not be allowed to marry without their parents' permission until they are 18 years old. Up taking it ahead, many countries do not set any age minimum for marriage. Therefore, a large number of children marriages take place worldwide in the 21st century. A good example of how the law has helped shape the social construction of childhood is the age of sexual consent. Now, when you talk about this age of sexual consent, this again, you'd be able to witness this more in the Western world, right? In many Islamic dominated countries, in many countries from the from South Asia or the Middle East, आपके पास this is what do you call it, there's no legal age of consent. There's no legal age of consent, or in other words, आपके पास any sort of sexual relationship outside of marriage is looked down upon. In many countries, it is illegal. Clear here? In the 19th century, English common law set it about 10 to 12 years, but in the light of child prostitution scandals, it was officially raised to 13 years in 1875 and then 16 years in 1885. Clear here? The majority of countries around the world have an age of consent between 16 and 18. However, the age of consent is 21 in Bahrain. So if we have a look at cross-cultural comparison, अगर हम अलग-अलग cultures को compare करते हैं, so we'd find out we have Bahrain over here, we have South Korea over here, we have Nigeria over here, we have Japan over here. अलग-अलग countries के अंदर आपके पास अलग-अलग ages हैं of sexual consent. Additionally, several Middle Eastern and African countries have no legal age of consent, but a total ban on all sexual relationships outside of marriage. This has raised concern by many international organizations, especially in some countries where girls are married at as young as 9 to 10 years old. Pakistan does have a legal age, yes. Yeah, the extent to which people follow these rules and regulations is, again, questionable here. Yeah, 1845, yeah. Do we proceed? Now, taking it ahead, this is a question. Describe 2 social policies that restrict the behavior of children. It's a 4-mark question. We have discussed how to attempt a typical 4-mark question. We had this question in the year March 2021. March 2021 का एक ही वेरिएंट होता है. इंडिया के पेपर्स मार्च में होते हैं. Do we proceed? Now, they make a special paper for India, yes. ज़्यादा नहीं है इंडिया में students. Yes, that's a reason. I'd be able to comment on that in a better manner after we're done with this. Okay, so prevent, and this has recently started. Huh? So yeah, preventing child abuse is seen as a priority by majority of more industrialized countries. Therefore, laws and punishments have been put into place to deter physical and sexual abuse and neglect. Clear here? And female genital mutilation. However, female genital mutilation is practiced legally in 29 countries in Africa and the Middle East, according to a 2013 United Nations International Emergency Children's Fund report. Clear here? Many Western societies have taken legal steps to criminalize FGM. FGM kya hai? Ye raha. In order to deter migrant communities from this practice. The next point, many modern states take some economic responsibility for children by paying benefits to parents. One of the reasons why Desis from our part of the world, they like the idea of moving abroad and giving birth to children there. In 1970, Singapore introduced a stop at 2 children policy, which, while an estimated 200 million births were prevented by China's 1-child policy between 1979 and 2011. Are we good here? These policies that financially rewarded parents for limiting the number of children they had and penalized some parents for having too many children were put into action because of concerns about overpopulation. Now, not many of you might know about Singapore's policy, but I'm sure quite a majority over here is aware about China's one-child policy. Recently, they did. There is relaxation in this policy now. Are we clear? कहाँ पे? That I'm not sure about. इनकी पॉलिसी चेंज होती रहती है. ये हमें चेक करना पड़ेगा. All right. Now, in Western societies, governments have attempted to lift families out of poverty in order to improve children's future education and job opportunities. So, all of these initiatives, again, all of these interventions are done by the government. तो गवर्नमेंट का आप कैसे कह सकते हो कि रोल नहीं है? गवर्नमेंट का एक एक्टिव रोल है. And there was this question that we had about the involvement of the state when it comes to family related affairs. अभी recently आपके कैम्ब्रिज के एग्जामिनेशन में भी आया है, right? अब वो family in general के बारे में question है that we can discuss after this, right? In fact, the handouts that I've asked for from your admin have to do with that. Did you get to meet her? What did she say? She's sending it? Okay. अब लेकिन यहाँ पे हम बात कर रहे हैं, अगर हम स्टेट के इन्वॉल्वमेंट की बात करें, स्टेट की पॉलिसीज की बात कर रहे हैं, these have to do with children only. ठीक है? Some modern states protect children's welfare in the event of parental separation and divorce. Again, emphasizing that decisions taken by parents and the courts should be in the best interest of the child. Therefore, the courts, when making decisions about custody, have to take on board what children themselves say about their experiences and what they want with regard to parenting. Do we move on? Now, state family policy and the law are therefore central in today's modern societies in defining and shaping parental responsibility. Now, the state defines parental responsibility. The state shapes parental responsibility. एक सीधी बात है कि हम बात कर रहे हैं about the future of a child. In case of divorce, it's a state that decides. It's the judiciary, it's the legal system that decides बच्चे की custody किसके पास जा रही है, right? अगर बच्चे की custody, in most cases, as we see it, it's the mother who has the child's custody, right? In that case, making a point that the father is bound to pay for the expenses because he is equally a parent, right? Now, the state sets out duties of parents and gives them rights over children's bodies and children's time. However, some critics argue that the state does not always protect children. Some governments seem to be very reluctant to legislate with regard to parental violence. For example, smacking children, which is banned in 30 countries. Pakistan isn't one of them. Is not. Yeah. Including Scotland, but remains legal in England and Wales, the USA, Canada, and Australia. समझ में नहीं है parental violence. Parental violence, sir, हमारे मुल्क में रहते हुए, मतलब माँ बाप, they're not allowed to hit their child or beat their child. इधर तो मारते, मैं यही तो कह रहा हूँ, पाकिस्तान में तो मारते हैं. क्या ख्याल है आपके इसके बारे में? आप कुछ नहीं बोलो, क्यों? अच्छा, from Neymar. अलाउड होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए, क्या ख्याल है आपका? थोड़ा बहुत लाजिम है. मैं बताता हूँ आपको. Okay. Now, Eunice, grades पे मेरे ख्याल से जब ग्रेड्स मैटर करना शुरू कर देते हैं तब तक बच्चा बड़ा हो जाता है. इतनी अकल बच्चे को खुद लड़ानी चाहिए. Okay. Now, UNICEF measures children's well-being by using 5 dimensions of children's lives. Number 1, wealth, health and safety, education, behavior and risk, and housing and environment. Clear? Now, these are the parameters through which the UNICEF gauges the well-being of children. And what are they? Number 1, your wealth. Number 2, health and safety. Number 3, education. Number 4, behavior and risk. Number 5, housing and environment. For example, more industrialized societies in which children generally enjoy a good standard of living and housing and good health, as well as high levels of literacy and numeracy, are ranked highly. However, UNICEF also asks children about their subjective well-being, right? Asking children about their subjective well-being minded. Those societies in which few children express anxiety, depression, or problems such as self-harm or eating disorders are classed highly on the basis of well-being, right? यहाँ से हमें पता चल रहा है about international intervention, UNICEF. आगे बढ़े. Now let's conclude this. Sociologists generally accept that childhood is a social construction, but they also point out that this concept of social construction is not straightforward in the 21st century because there are significant variations on children's experience of childhood. Now, when we talk about children's experiences of childhood, I'd want you all to go up over here and have a look at this, the variations and the experiences children have. The study that was conducted by Malinowski in 1922, the experiences of the Trobriand Islanders. How is it that their childhood experiences are different from the childhood experiences that individuals have in the Western world? ऊपर अगर आप heading देखते हैं तो हमारे पास cross cultural variation लिखा हुआ है. Let me know when you're done reading. Do we move on? चलें? ये अलग अलग सोसाइटीज के कंपैरिजन है आपके पास. जी बेटा. जी हाँ जी हाँ. Come on, have a look at this quick. Done? The influence of biology, beta. So variations होंगी. Yes, so within a society भी variations होती हैं. I mean, that's where we took a start from. इसीलिए तो हम social construction कह रहे हैं. Differences on the basis of your social class, your gender, your ethnicity, your region, your religion, your customs, your traditions. Yeah. चलें? Have a look at this. आते हैं. यहाँ से या अब यहाँ से बच्चे जब जाते हैं, when families migrate, तो yes, बच्चों को प्रॉब्लम तो होती है. या अगर आप वहां से लेके आ जाएं किसी को यहाँ पे तो. But for now we're focusing on children. Yeah. ये नील बोस्टमैन का जो कल मैंने आपको आर्टिकल पढ़ाया था. Okay, moving on. Yeah. Now, in the 21st century, because there are significant variations on children's experience of childhood due to influences such as gender role, socialization, your social class, your culture, ethnicity, religion, region, globalization. Hayward in 2018, for example, stresses that although progress has been made in the protection of children, inequalities between social classes, regions, and ethnic groups continue to exist. Therefore, an important aspect of the social construction argument is the understanding that childhood is not a fixed universal experience. Rather, it is a relative experience. Why is it that we're referring to this as a relative experience? Because what your experience might be like might be very different from what your experience is. Clear? It can be experienced positively and negatively, and most importantly, not all cultures construct it as a sacred and special experience. In some parts of the world, childhood is a dangerous and risky period of a person's life, which often involves early death and suffering. Do we get this? Now, this brings this particular part to an end. Of course, there was more we discussed yesterday than we did today, because what we discussed yesterday that had more to do with the past. आज जो हमने discuss किया that had more to do with the 20th and the 21st century, and it all was pretty relatable. Thank you. You didn't have to do this yourself. Thank you, Jazakallah. Okay. Do we all get this, beta? Do we all get this? Right. Now, moving on, have a look at this question. Will you be able to get into this? अभी नहीं करना, लेकिन ये क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं, ये चीजें हमने डिस्कस की हैं या नहीं की? कर ली हैं. One. Number two, have a look at this question. Gender is the most important factor in affecting the experience of children in the family. You're expected to write 2 clear and developed points. You might as well treat this as 2 separate points of 5 marks each, where you are able to demonstrate good knowledge and understanding, sociological material, concepts, theories, evidences. Whatever the material is that you're selecting should be appropriate and focused on the question, and relevance made clear. अक्सर बच्चे vague content लिख के आ जाते हैं. Relevance clear, relevance, whatever the content is that you're writing, उसकी relevance according to the demands of the question, वो आपकी जिम्मेदारी है. Clear, beta? And then we had this another question in May-June 2020, the 21 variant. Evaluate the view that in contemporary societies, the family has become child-centered. The family has become child-centered or has not become child-centered. Again, these references that you have over here, इसमें से अक्सर आपने किए में, but let me remind you all of these names that we have over here, they are merely indicative content. Depends on what book you're preparing from. Clear? Yeah. See, that has got nothing to do with you, your answer. That has got nothing to do with how the answer would be graded. Answer आपका इसी mechanism से grade होगा. Paper check हो जाएगा. जो grade eventually आ रहा होता है. That doesn't make any difference. It would be similar. There are a handful of books that we use. Yeah. नहीं. वही किताबें ना बेटा. गिनती की किताबें जो यूज हो रही हैं. And then again, in Pakistan, we're the ones who are using multiple books. Now, like for instance, this content you were doing over here, ये जो content है, ये आपकी किताब का तो नहीं है. This has been picked up from somewhere else. ये सारा content, right? Likewise, this content that I showed you, this is again from somewhere else, right? This content, this is again from somewhere else. So चार sources तो अभी आपके सामने हैं. And it's us who doing this over here in Pakistan. Others don't. Clear? So I hope you're all clear with this. Okay. Now we were discussing this. Like I said, we had started off this unit 4.4.1, the social construction of childhood, in the last lesson. Okay. Both of this come under the heading of age and family life. अब इसको अगर मैं थोड़ा सा आगे लेके चलूं तो there's something that I'd want to first discuss with you. अब unit 4.4.2 आपका क्या है? ठीक है. Unit 4.4.2 has to do with the theoretical approaches to childhood. May I have your attention, please? Can you please put that down? Can you please put that down? Yes. Down. Okay, so yeah. I'm waiting. It's okay. Okay, look over here. So we just got done with unit 4.4.1. Okay, this is unit 4.4.2. This is theoretical approaches to childhood, right? Now, listen to me very carefully. Theoretical approaches to childhood, आपके पास यहाँ पे ये 6 approaches लिखी हुई हैं जो आपके पास syllabus में है. The march of progress approach, the new right approach, the social conflict approach, the feminist approach. Beta लोग को भैया. The social action theorist approach, interactionism, and postmodernism. ये 6 approaches हैं आपके पास. This is how they are. 1, 2, 3. This is the same question that we had at the back. 4. ये आ गया 4 आपका. ठीक है. 5 and 6. Right? ये 6 approaches हैं, and this is where your unit, this particular unit ends. Let me take you back. ये 6 approaches की हम बात कर रहे हैं. ये. Are we good here? ठीक है. अब if you have a look at the syllabus, I'd want everyone to look at the syllabus. This is what we're doing, right? अब यहाँ पे आपके पास, if you have a look at the syllabus, the social construction of childhood and changes in the role and social position of children in the family. Did you do this? The role and social position of grandparents in the family, including cross-cultural comparisons and the impact of changing life expectancy upon the family. ठीक है? Social class, gender, and ethnicity as factors affecting the experience of childhood in the family, and changes in the concept of motherhood and fatherhood. कहीं पे भी ये 6 approaches जो आपके पास किताब में हैं, they're not specified. Clear? So if anything, they're additional content. They could be used as references. Are we good here? हाँ? किसका? Family का? नहीं, family का main content नहीं हुआ. There's one more topic, and these handouts that I have in front of you, I'll tell you why I have them over here. We do this concepts in the changes in the concepts of motherhood and fatherhood. Get this, beta? Are we clear here? All right. Now let's go back. This is where we were, right? I just wanted to show you कि आपके पास ये जो theoretical approaches to childhood है, ये कहीं पे भी specifically syllabus के अंदर they're not mentioned there. And of course, लेकिन देखिए ये जो content है आपका march of progress, do you see this? This. अब ये as a reference यहाँ पे use हुआ हुआ है. Are we good? So yeah, this brings unit 4.4.1 to an end.